So, AutoML is essentially a machine learning product where you kind of set your own labels for the Vision API. So say I'm going to use my exact example of what I have set up, and I'll even mention the one earlier. I collect concert posters for a living, or not for a living. That'd be awesome. I collect concert posters as just kind of a hobby. And before AutoML had even come out, I was wanting to have a machine learning model that could tell the difference between all the different artists. But I don't know TensorFlow. I don't know Python. I don't know all the stuff that I'd need to know to make a model to tell the difference between one artist to the next to be able to predict that. So this product came out, and luckily I was able to do that. That example is so specific that it's not something that the pre-trained model that Google has of the Vision API would be able to say, oh, hey, look, it's this guy, because it's a super specific use case. So that's kind of one. It also gives you, AutoML also gives you an API to call into, so you're not like you don't have to build a whole TensorFlow model for a more, I guess, easier, simpler machine learning type thing. So that's kind of a brief overview of what AutoML Vision is, at least. With Translate, I don't know if I've even actually used it to give you a good example of that. You don't know. Translate. No, I'm not going to try and explain it and be wrong. But there was. So we're going to cover mostly the Vision one. If Vikram somehow has something, I'm going to. Anything for translator? Nope. Okay, that's what I thought. So AutoML Vision has APIs that you can call into, which is great. So we're just going to get straight into it. I'm going to show you guys the AutoML user interface, kind of walk you through how things work. If you have questions, just ask them in the middle of the thing. We don't need to wait till the end for you to forget your question or me be able to direct you somewhere. So one of the things that I know was shown off earlier today, he was showing like stuffed animals that he had put in that his kid had, which was a fairly simple model of, here's a stuffed duck, I think there was a bunny and something. As I had mentioned, I collect posters. I have a model in here that's got 16,000 different images of posters, which it's a lot harder to tell. And honestly, I didn't think this would work. It's looking at different, it almost seems like styles. So you can do more complex images than just simple things like stuffed animals, or I think I'm going to scroll down to a part on the Vision thing just because this is taking place at Disney. Disney apparently uses AutoML for, I don't know the exact things. If there's some dude in Disney in here that uses it, I'd love to hear your thing, but here's the quote. I'm going to try and make this a magical talk somehow. So, I think I know what yeah, you work for Google. I'll let you.
So, real quick, I believe I read an article about how Disney uses AutoML to tag their back catalog of media. So they can say, like, this photo, if you have millions of images and lots of footage, it's not cost effective for a human to go through them and say, oh, Goofy is there and Donald Duck is in that one. But it's cost effective to have a computer go through them and categorize which cartoon character is in which piece of media.
Ja, wat people
Yeah, so you were saying like it's kind of like Google Photos in your little side conversation, like, and it, in a way, it kind of is, where you've got a whole bunch of pictures of a face of your friend, and you can essentially categorize it and say that's this friend, and give him a name. So that's kind of what you're doing. You're creating these custom labels for that user, or not user, for that label. So like here I've got a whole bunch of different artists in here. And I guess just kind of one thing that, and as I'd mentioned, there's an API to pull the stuff up. The nice thing with the API is it can also automatically add stuff in. So you can essentially have this run on its own, where you can upload one if the prediction is, to a certain percentage, you could have it put it into that label for you, so that you can essentially take the user data and have it build further on. So little tips and tricks of AutoML. So if you were to create, I guess to create one, if you go to beta-dot-custom-vision.appspot.com, which is the craziest, I don't know why they put the product there, but that's where they did. So I would just go to the look up AutoML and you'll get there from there, other than remembering that. So if you we'll create a quick data set called DevFest Florida. And there's a few, this was kind of gone over in the last one, where I'm going to touch on kind of creating data sets. There's a few different ways that you can start your own data set. You can start it with, you can upload a zip file, which is honestly a great way of doing it. The zip file, you can have it, if you format it correctly, and I'll go over that a little bit, you can have it upload directly into labels and create the labels for you. You just need to have the folders set up the proper way. So if you spend time getting all your data, which is literally the hardest thing, before you start doing this, you will be so much ahead of the game. You can upload JPEGs, PNGs. You can upload GIFs. It doesn't say that it supports it, but it totally does. And it only takes the first frame, which is why I think they probably don't have that listed as being supported on there. You can also upload a CSV file, where your first column would be the location on the Google Cloud storage, and then your second column would be your the label that you want to put it under. You can also import images later if you want. There's also multi-label classification. One downside to selecting multi-label classification is you don't get the confusion matrix, which makes it, I'll show that in a second, a little bit easier to figure out kind of how well it's working with just a quick glance. But that only shows like 10 labels, so if you have more than 10 labels, I don't know how useful that actually is. I haven't played too much with multi-label classifications, just due to what I've been playing with. With my poster thing, there's not many times that the artists collaborate enough. So if you were to upload the zip file, which we'll just start that going. And while that is going, we'll open the zip file. So it's set up in a way where there's just a folder called clouds, because it's a bunch of images of clouds. And then within it, there's two other folders. There's the cumulonimbus and the Sirius, which are the different types of clouds, which contain the images of those images that will go within those labels. So essentially it's folder and then folders that are your label names if you upload the zip file. So when creating the images on your computer, that is the way to do it. And it's still importing. It'll take a little bit here, but any questions at this current time while that keeps going?
What is this model supposed to do?
So this one is actually, I'm taking the images from a code lab that is done by Google where it can identify different cloud types using the cloud. So that's the really corny tagline that Google likes to use when discussing this exact model every time. I was surprised they didn't use this one at Next, but they tend to bust this one out a lot. So it takes a bit, but as you can see, it creates the labels already. Yeah.
Is it creating the labels based on the folder it was in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You could have named it anything. You could have named it like food.
Yep.
Say food there.
I could have named one food and the other bar, but it's neither food nor bar. So that would be a bad example of something when I wanted to do a prediction on it. And then, so like if you select one, it's got a nice way. If you put one in the wrong label, you can move it around. If it's not correct, you can change it, move it over to the unlabeled area so that you can then, apparently it didn't like my selecting unlabeled. I probably didn't. That looks more like an atom bomb than anything else. Click OK, and it goes over into the unlabeled. So I mean, kind of simple. The nice little label stats thing. Minimally, you should probably have about 100 images on each one of the labels. It can get tedious the more labels you get and the more things you need to get to that 100. One suggestion that my friend had was take a video and take frames out of that video so that they're slightly different, like go around the object. And that's a great way just to, like if you had the stuffed animals, for example, that my friend had, or that the other speaker had, if he just walked around, he could get a whole bunch of different angles of it and know quickly what it is. So that's one way. Another thing to think about is when you take a picture of an object, it's out kind of in the wild most of the time. A lot of the times the clouds are, when you take a picture of clouds, it's typically a picture that takes up like the whole, like half the image, I feel like. So that's kind of a bad example. But the Vision API has a image detector that's in beta right now. So like you can actually cut down the image down to kind of the area that you want. So for example, if I were to try and I haven't played with it much, but if with my poster one, I decided to pull up this image and I wanted to figure out, you know, one of the posters on there, it'd be a lot easier to select one than trying to crop it and bring it down. And yes, this is actually someone's wall in their house that I had them send me while I was in another talk earlier today. People are ridiculous. So this does exist. This is a thing.
Yeah. So, and obviously I don't know much about AutoML, but When you uploaded those images, was that part of the training? Like you're telling it?
No, so we'll get to training in a second here, because the problem with training, with AutoML and giving a talk, when I click train, it doesn't let me do literally anything else during the training. But you'd come over here and click train and start training. And the training has, price-wise, it's free for the first hour, and you can train it up to 24 hours in a day. Well, there's 24 hours in a day. So you can train it up to 24 hours at a time. And it's $20 an hour after that first hour. So it can be pricey. Not going to sugarcoat that one. A lot of the time when you're getting started and you have, less than 1,000, 2,000 images, just keep going with the free one, which is only allowed up to 10 times each month. But like, even with 16,000 images, I think I train it maybe 4 or 6 hours when I've done it. So it's not, and it didn't show a significant change. When I was doing the alpha, I was free, so I tried training it up to 24, and it didn't show a huge change even. So until you really need to throw it into production, I'd say just keep sticking with 1 hour and seeing kind of how the results show. Keep talking.
So is it looking at your images and then the label that you gave it and just figuring out the different properties of those images?
Yeah, so we'll go to the predict tab and throw a few predictions in it. Since we're at Disney, we'll make something slightly Disney related. Go through it. It's probably going to crap out on me 1 or 2 times because it's done that, as I've been testing it earlier today, that the model needs to warm up. So essentially that's going to spin for a little bit, then give me the upload. There we go. At least I know where it breaks. I don't know why it does this to me, and it didn't do it to the guy this morning, but it does. I've warmed it up before, and it just doesn't like me apparently. So, all right, that was time 2. Third time's a charm, I promise. At least I told you guys I was going to do it 1 to 2 times. So, but yeah, so it looks at the image and makes a prediction based on that. There we go. All right. So Dan Mumford is actually the artist of this nice Star Wars print here. It doesn't have his name really anywhere on that image at all. So, I mean, there's definitely, and as you go through kind of the artist, as, the naked eye can tell, they each kind of have their own different drawing styles. So I think it's kind of looking at the style a little bit and going off that. They're all slightly... And if you look and go to the evaluate tab, that's got like kind of the false positives, the true positives, things like that. So that you can see with like which ones are kind of similar to that artist, and then you have to kind of upload ones that so that one, I don't know what that is, but I don't even see how that's even remotely similar, but apparently it thinks it is.
But it didn't identify
it didn't identify over 50% with it. So
But it didn't say that anybody else was more likely.
no, and that's kind of So that's a little bit where the issue, but I'm trying to think of who might have. I think Mazda's got a few. Yeah, so it's got a few different types of those false negatives. There's another subset. There we go. False positives that has different artists that it's identifying it as, that it's not. I believe. So, and the confusion matrix I was talking about earlier is this. If you guys were in the earlier one, as you were saying, it's nice to have 100% going all the way across. Realistically, you're probably never going to get 100% going all the time. Kind of these are where your trouble spots are on each one. Is where it's a quick way of evaluating how well your model's working with different labels. Really is what it comes down to. But as I said, it only shows 10 labels, and you can have, I want to say, thousands of labels now. At one point it was up to 100, and now I feel like it's up to some ridiculous number that I can't even think of anymore.
How do you make it better? Like, what do you just train it?
You give it more, give it more data. It's machine learning's a black magic box, I feel like. What? Yeah, AutoML is definitely more black boxy. Give it images that are similar to ones that work, and it will hopefully go the way you want it to.
I've never used machine learning in my life, and I just built a model that can tell the difference between track and field photos and resting photos, so it works.
Yeah, and the more labels you put in there, it starts getting a little more dicier and dicier, and it's super easy to use. I honestly, before I started doing this, had done nothing with machine learning. It's a really great jumping off point to start kind of getting to know things. There's really good documentation on learning more about machine learning and like what these evaluations are. That's right here in this evaluate tab. Before they didn't have that, and I had to start Googling everything under God's green earth to try and figure out what things like recall meant and things like that. And you can so that earlier photo I showed where it didn't say for sure it was that one guy. It was the like 46.3% the wrong person. You can adjust the threshold for that and see kind of what effect that will have on your model with the moving dot there. I've typically just kept it at the 50% because I figure that's kind of the safe spot. So I think I'm done a little early unless you guys got some more questions. And no? All right.